Right, fantastic. Thank you all for coming. We're starting a little bit late, so I'll be talking very, very, very quickly. Basically, who of you came to this talk at Ame last summer? Oh, okay. So a lot of people have actually not come across the show before. That's a real bitch because I'm going to have to speed through everything. Right. For those who don't know me, I'm Will Blewett. I used to do convention stuff, but my day job is computer science, programming, and robotics. Which means for me, when I first got into anime in the early 90s, when Tenchi Muyo wasn't considered retro, I got into it because there were robots and shit. And we didn't get robots and shit in television. I shall carry on. Okay, can you... Oh, bloody hell! Dare I?
Yeah, touch it.
Stroke it.
No, that's just focus. You'll need to move it physically back, I think, to zoom out.
Move the whole table.
Move the whole table.
Given it took two guys to actually get it to turn on, I don't think he wants to touch it.
Okay, right. Right. This is what we'll cover, but we're going to cover it anyway, so you don't need an overview, and we're out of time. Okay, right. Here we go. At work, I get assessed on my lecturing. Any of you who work in academia know that there's always somebody who has nothing to do with your discipline, but thinks they know everything there is to know about teaching people. My preferred method of lecturing is called guided academic discourse, which is a posh way for saying we all sit around a nice table, somebody talks about shit, and everybody says they're wrong. The important things are, that's the way I run the talk. Questions are a good thing. If you have a question at any point during the talk, stick your hand up. It might mean we don't finish the talk, if it's a particularly interesting question, but we're all here to talk about the same thing, so it doesn't really matter. Alternative views are great. If you disagree with me, say so, please. It's fantastic to actually get to debate and discuss stuff, and with something like Cyberpunk, there are as many different views on what it is as there are people who watch the shit. Yeah, I try and be personable when I'm lecturing. I tend to find there is nothing more annoying than somebody who does this without addressing the audience at all and try to teach you general relativity. I went through that. It was not pleasant. Telling the events officer how long the panel is meant to be. Yeah, I did that, and I timed it at an hour, and we are now 20 minutes in, and we're 2 minutes in, so that's going to be fun. Right, okay, what is Cyberpunk? Google knows everything. We all know that, we all rely on it heavily. I do particularly like Google's definition. I don't necessarily agree with it, but a genre of science fiction set in a lawless subculture of an oppressive society dominated by computer technology. It sounds just like London, doesn't it? Or a writer of such science fiction. Now, I never really considered William Gibson a cyberpunk. He was a bit of a twat, but according to Google, that's what he is. What does the internet say? Right, now this was a bunch of searches that I did, and they're really funny, but it's difficult to... Okay. Cyberpunk is a sensibility or belief that a few outsiders armed with their own individuality and technological capability can fend off the tendencies of the traditional institutions to use technology to control society. Yeah, you can tell from the 80s, can't you? Cyberpunk is a science fiction genre in which the future world is portrayed as one in which society is largely controlled by computers at the expense of daily life and social order. And cyberpunk is a postmodern and science fiction genre noted for its focus on high tech and low life. That's Wikipedia, the other font of all knowledge. Okay, what I found when I asked people what is cyberpunk, they tell me this. Akira, absolutely fantastic, but overrated as time's gone on. Blade Runner, still great. You know, they can release as many director's cuts of that shit as they want. I will buy them all. Tron, very early evidence of Cyberpunk, but it ticks all the boxes. RoboCop, the definitive Cyberpunk launcher. And Bubblegum Crisis, my personal favourite, and the reason that I did all the anime shit to begin with, because everyone loves pink hair. Right. Any examples that you'd like to put forward as Cyberpunk?
Armitage.
Yes. I'd agree. No question. One of my favourites, especially the bit where the dog explodes. I love showing that to people who think that anime isn't gruesome anymore. That's what the Daily Mail told us.
Mad Max series.
Oh.
They're Australians, they don't have computers.
Okay, I was about to say I'll defer that to Dave.
It's got the dystopian lawlessness.
It's Australia.
It's set in Australia. I thought it was a documentary.
No, come on.
It's set in the worst parts of Australia. Wait, there are good parts. Ignoring the geographical location.
Go on.
You've got the lawless society, you've got the breakdown of the society after what apparently is the nuclear war.
Yeah.
You've got a lot of the strands of the hero journey, which is normally found within a lot of the genre.
Okay.
And there is a lot of it is to do with the technology people have, even though it's not high tech.
It's low tech.
It's very low tech, but the approach and the attitude towards the technology in it is very similar to a lot of the other genres. It's just that it's not the high end stuff. Other than that, though, the way it's approached, the attitudes, the way that people use the technology, it's very much they take the technology and remodel it themselves. You've got the tinker at them.
Yeah.
I think it pretty much counts, and it's also, if you read through a lot of the cyberpunk stuff, it's really easy to imagine that being that kind of environment is what is outside of the cities. So it should definitely be within that world.
I'd like to actually address this point because, first off, it's an example that I've never actually considered. I love Mad Max, the first one, the second one's okay, the third one, Tina Turner sings in it. Yeah, apparently. I think that's a very good point. And it feeds into something I was talking about with Duncan earlier, which is a lot of the stuff that we called cyberpunk in the 1980s and 1990s is what we call Edge magazine today. So there is a point to be made that essentially a petrol head variant of cyberpunk. I think there's a point to be made. I personally think that, like Pluto being a planet, it would fall on its face as soon as a bunch of academics got together and decided to destroy everyone's childhoods. But I do see the point you're making.
Are we allowed to bring games into this?
Go ahead.
Syndicate.
Yes, so much yes.
Deus Ex.
Well, that kind of goes without saying. Anyone want to mention Cyberpunk 2077 or the RPG version variant of 22 years ago, Duncan?
I say I was going to comment on what he was saying about Mad Max. That this seems more like a more general definition of punk genres in general. You have steampunk, diesel punk, petrol punk, gaslight punk, things like that.
If I'd ever come across the term petrol punk, that would be how I would describe Mad Max.
Yeah, exactly.
But I've never come across the term before. I like it though. Hey Dave.
Yeah.
If anyone wants to have a discussion about Mad Max at some point,
He'll be at the bar.
Personally, I would say that the thing about Mad Max is it's actually a reflection on the problem of Australia, which is Australia has this image of being a very open, she'll be right, Bonza, whatever. And really it's not. They are very tight on all the legislation and all the rules, and you will fit in with what society thinks is the right thing to do, and I think Mad Max is a rebellion against that.
Oh, very good point. Right. Where everything comes from. Have any of you ever found a copy of Becky's Cyberpunk? Nope. It really isn't that good. But it does raise, it basically has nothing to do with what we then called Cyberpunk, but it did give birth to the name. William Gibson's written a load of stuff, and largely it's good. I mean, I would love to hate it, but no, really. The guy was very insightful for somebody who was writing in the 1980s. And especially the Sprawl trilogy. I mean, they're the ones that everyone who talks about Cyberpunk will tell you to read, and there's a reason everybody tells you to read them. Philip K. Dick, my personal favourite. Do androids dream of electric sheep? It's not really Blade Runner. Just to clarify, those of you who say, everyone reads the Wikipedia article, it's based on Blade Runner. Blade Runner is based on android dream of electric sheep. You then read down to the bits of differences between the book and the film, and you have the entire plot. Total Recall, Minority Report, book far better than film. Total Recall, arguable. The short story that it's based on is good, but fucking Arnie and an exploding woman's head. And the Johnny Cab.
Are we just going to
was excellent. But the movie was excellent Cyberpunk.
Yes, I'm coming on to that.
Right.
Are we just going to completely gloss over the comments for that?
What?
Yes.
Okay, that's fine. The new one's Jack.
Well, the new Total Recall, we will be referencing it later on. I'm not quite there yet. And Neil Stevenson, I particularly like Snow Crash, but The Diamond Age is also worth a read.
One more I would add to that is John Brunner's Shortwave Rider,
Oh,
which is interesting in that he's very light on describing the tech, and he talks a lot about phones because that's what he had.
yeah.
But you can swap out phones, put it in computers, and it still works.
Yeah, that's a good point. And it actually feeds into what you were saying about Mad Max earlier, that relative levels of technology.
Yeah. I'd also add Richard Morgenthau's Carbon onto that list. It's
Yes.
really cyberpunk in some ways. It does a lot more transhumanism and what have you, but it's definitely got a feel to it, I think.
Yes, I mean, in fairness, I should point out that my leanings I like existentialist bollocks, I really do, and it's one of the things that made the genre appeal to me when I was that high. Well, actually, I was never when I was that high, and yes, definitely. The things that I tend to recommend on the basis that there's enough story that somebody who doesn't really want to pursue the existentialist angle can still get a decent read out of it and not feel like they've wasted 30p on Kindle or whatever.
If you want to go back to the origins of the stuff, you could look at sort of more dystopian but still heavy technology of 1984, Brave New World, that kind of thing, as being cyberpunk,
Yes.
proto-cyberpunk.
PHX.
There's not technology.
Yes, that is definitive. Regarding the 1984 point, yes, you are right, definitely. It angles to the dystopian and the technology level is right.
Nowadays it looks
from the
old-fashioned,
perspective
technology.
of when it was written,
Yeah.
the technology level
being
is
used as
suitable.
instruction manual.
Can I just point out that actually the interesting thing about 1984 is one area where dystopia is used correctly, because a dystopia is something where you intended a utopia and it went wrong. It's slightly different to an anti-utopia.
Yes.
Subtle but important definition.
Okay. Right. When was it being written? The stuff that tends to be seen as defining the genre was Reagan and Thatcher.
Fuck yeah.
Common duo.
Now, in fairness, it was set against the backdrop of what was the tail end of the Cold War, where if you ever read any of the public service documentation and the propaganda about what was going on both sides of the Iron Curtain, from the perspectives of both sides of the Iron Curtain. First off, it's some scary shit there, but the perspectives are what's important, how people felt things were going. The Cold War, particularly when things were tailing off, the space race had been won and nobody gave a shit anymore. And then the space race was won again, and nobody gave a shit anymore again. Sorry, I'm just looking to see if Duncan has an aneurysm. And where technology was headed. you know, where people, you know, of the era, subjectively, you could say people were aware that computing technology was moving forward, you know, bold new strides. But compared to our perspective on technology, and indeed the average man on the street's perspective of technology, you know, when I say average man on the street, I mean a Londoner with his iPhone, probably diamond encrusted. The knowledge that something was happening was there. The knowledge of what it was and what its limitations were from the perspective of the audience was rather more limited than we take for granted today. The economic angle, that's very evident in things like bubblegum crisis.
Aliens, the aliens.
Aliens. Yes, but I would consider alien science fiction
No,
rather than
in
cyberpunk.
terms of the idea of the multinational.
The multinational is going to profit from selling your babies and turning them into Soylent Green. Who's seen Soylent Green? Anyone without their hands up see Soylent Green? and then watch some articles on the contamination of meat.
No spoilers!
Yeah. Go on.
Let's go say on the economic definitely the American tradition.
That'd be more accent.
Was in
Is that the Brony
edition? They'd say a lot of it was the rise of Japan as an economic superpower. That they were reacting to the idea that the American economy was going from the dream of the 60s and 70s, crashing down this idea that Japan could essentially reinvade and take over again
in economic terms.
in economic and
Pearl
win
Harbor
World War II again.
Yes, essentially. But I would agree that is definitely a reason. That's definitely not a reasonable perspective, but a rational argument to make of the perspective of the time. As in, I'm agreeing with you. I'm just saying that people who thought that in the 80s were stupid. So yes, yeah, that's a perfectly valid point. And there was the Reagan era wasn't particularly nice for America, especially in domestic economic terms. And there was the perspective, which we have today, of the multinational, the mega bank, the huge, the huge amounts of wealth centered in a single economic edifice, which also happens to dine with the president and the prime minister on a Sunday.
Well, yeah. To be fair, Eisenhower warned about the military-industrial complex back in the late 50s.
Look,
so.
Yes, and people didn't take him seriously, and look where we are.
Yeah, the military-industrial complex pays my wages, so you leave that shit alone.
Okay, but yes, the information age. This was a big feeling in the 80s, you know, where 1984 was required reading for people who didn't like the system after 1984, as ironic as that sounds. And the questions they were asking then are the questions that we're asking now about Facebook. And just how much information is too much information to let people know. Just how much information is it right that your friends can know, but that you don't want government to particularly know about? Is it sensible for government to be able to track your car everywhere it goes? For the purposes of measuring tax that you pay on it, and definitely not to determine whether or not you were at a political rally. Things like that. So there was a lot of fear about what technology could bring. And that fed into some great, great material. Blade Runner. Yes. If you, has anyone here not seen Blade Runner? No. Get out! Take him from this place. Stick off a laptop and buy Blade Runner for £3 from HM if there's an HMV open. And let him watch Blade Runner. Let him see the glory that is the definitive cyberpunk.
And everyone film his reactions.
Yes. Yes. Exactly, to bring him into the fold. We do not turn away those who have yet to see the glory of Cyberpunk.
You will be assimilated.
Robocop. It made so much fucking money. And it was awesome. You know, as an action film, as a commentary on the influence of private sector over what should be governmental responsibilities. It ticked every single box, and it is Verhoeven's magnum opus. You know, he never matched it, he never bettered it. If you haven't seen RoboCop, first off, what the fuck are you doing here? And second off, watch it, really. The original Total Recall movie. Classic. It has, again, everything. There's a question mark over whether the military-industrial complex is actually responsible. There's a question mark over whether or not any of the shit really happens, but that theory only came about when 15-year-olds are watching the film, you know, after the internet was invented, and we're saying, wouldn't it be cool if? As far as I'm aware, the scriptwriter has said, well, yeah, all that shit went down. So, anyway, Total Recall, brilliant movie, not as existentialist as some people would have you think, but it's got Arnie, shit blows up, and there's the Johnny Can. If you haven't seen it, watch it, you know what I mean. Robert Picardo, yes. The Doctor from Voyager plays the Johnny Can. The Lawnmower Man. Much maligned as Cyberpunk. What? Yes, I agree with you, but everyone I say that to says that I'm being insensitive.
It was Pierce Brosnan going through his Nicolas Cage period. You put a script in front of me, you give us some cash, I will act that fucker.
Yes, and added after a debate at the last panel, Short Circuit. Who here has seen Short Circuit? Awesome. It ticks all the boxes. It has the evil military-industrial complex. It has questions about the nature of existence. It has a cute robot. What more do you want, really? It also has G.W. Bailey.
Would you say Lawnmower Man is definitely cyberpunk?
I'd say there are arguments for it being considered cyberpunk. People tend to categorise it in that way. Personally, I think it's more of a social commentary. But
Yeah.
the technology is referenced. So
Because I'd say you need to add one more to that if that is the
Go
case
on,
of
go
Lawnmower
on,
Man.
please.
It would be Sandra Bullock in, is it The Net?
The Net.
Yeah.
That's kind of like Hackers, but not as good fun. It's like, no, The Net is like, The Net is the film they didn't learn a lesson for when they went to make Firewall with Harrison Ford. The Net is what they didn't learn a lesson for.
I think that's a valid point. That doesn't make me think the Net is not shit.
It is shit, yeah.
It's a diabolical
Undenying.
Would you say there are elements of cyberpunk in Brazil?
Brazil's Britain doing cyberpunk.
Yeah.
Brazil is basically, the point of Brazil is it is cyberpunk. It's basically 1984 run by the 1980s British government.
Yeah.
And basically how you can set off to do 1984. 1984 is about the idea of a controlling utopia that goes wrong. Brazil is about controlling utopia that goes wrong, both in terms of what it's setting out to do and whether or not it can do it with any degree of competence.
Where things went wrong. Johnny Mnemonic. Oh, come on, do not defend Johnny Mnemonic.
No.
2 words.
I liked it, I'm not saying it's good.
Yes.
In Johnny Noise defence, the room service ran.
The room service is genius, and the only bit of acting he's ever
2 words. Data storage density.
Okay, at many levels it was technically shite.
But you still kind of enjoy it and you don't know why.
There was just something gleeful about it. There was a bit of a giggle. I'm not going to say it should ever be considered great. It should be watched. It should be watched with your tongue firmly in your cheek.
Yes, I would actually agree there.
And
Actually,
Golden London, bloody amazing.
yes. Between you, me, and the Gatepost, Johnny Mnemonic's actually a guilty pleasure of mine. I know I shouldn't like it. I know everything about it that's technically shit. But if it's old Sky, I'll still put it on.
The VR user interface was pretty damn good.
The Stallone Dread. Drop your weapons. Yeah. Diabolical movie, but a good laugh. It's still, you know, it performed very well cinematically. It is cyberpunk. We can't argue that there isn't.
They put the ABC robot in it.
At the
There's
same
an
time-
ABC robot in
Oh,
it.
shut up. It's Judge Dredd of Michael Bay.
was place.
Yeah.
If it hadn't been for that, and if everything else had been in place, and you hadn't seen Dread's place, I think it would be released so much more popular.
You're probably right, and it was a cinematic success.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Rob Schneider.
It was. Then again, we'll come on to complaints about book trails and Mega City 1 later. Tech War. Who here has seen Tech War? Any of it? Isn't it gloriously camp? Yes. As Cyberpunk goes, it's what your grandmother would think Cyberpunk is if you tried to describe Blade Runner to her.
I've had new fractions more enjoyable.
But it is Cyberpunk. It was not popular.
There's a reason for that.
Yes, it did not do anything for the genre's acceptance. VR5, now we're getting into the really obscure bits of shit. Who here ever saw VR5?
Probably one episode.
It was Cyberpunk. It was very much the whole plug the person into the machine. It was Monster of the Week, and it was largely crap. But we are talking about the fall of Cyberpunk here, and RoboCop, the TV series.
Oh God. I didn't even know that.
It's a guilty pleasure for me because the chick who plays the woman trapped in the computer is exceptionally hot with the perm and everything and very 80s. But as RoboCop, no.
But would you say that is RoboCop TV series a failing of the view of Cyberpunk, or is it just a failing of, hey, you know what, if we get this on TV and make it PG-13, we'll make so much money?
The latter. It's definitely the latter. It's not a failure of Cyberpunk, but it was a failure in Cyberpunk.
A bit more of a leaning towards post-apocalyptic, but Captain Power and the Soldiers of the Future. If anyone saw that part.
You've actually moved outside my knowledge.
Well, check it out, Michael J. Straczynski, so if you like Babylon 5.
Hello. I adore JMS.
Captain Power and the Soldiers of the Future.
It was a bit more space opera, but it definitely had the bite and the grind. It was it was a kids series which had a load of cyberpunk feel to it.
Okay, and now what's happening? Where things have been coming for the past 10 years-ish. The Matrix, everybody loves it. I thought the first one was very good. The second one was meh, and the third one was meh. It was very much like reading Dune. The first one runs out, and then you get a 2-part sequel, and by the end of the third book you're thinking, why did the guy continue?
But that's because the first film fades out and you think, oh my god, what's going to happen? And then they pull back the curtain to reveal an infinite number of monkeys at not quite enough typewriters.
Good.
Made up for it.
To me, The Matrix is just, after watching Existence, then it's a much, it's grimier than The Matrix. It's got organic technology in it, and I think the themes are better thought through after looking at the sequels to The Matrix.
Yeah. In fairness, many things are better thought through. The coalition spending plans are better than the sequels to The Matrix.
The Matrix is trying to rip off Ghost of the Shell as much as possible.
Right, Code Lyoko. Now, I only saw a little bit of it. My sister laps it up. I am reliably informed it is Cyberpunk, and all the bits I've seen basically say that it's Cyberpunk for kids of the iPad generation. It has the technological aspects, but it brushes very firmly over anything to do with social dystopia. Heavens, no, it's on Cartoon Network, for God's sake. The new Minority Report, it did really well at the cinema. It's a passable action film. I personally didn't think much of it, but I am told by others that it was great.
I really liked the way it sort of tried new user interfaces and things. A lot of them were still Hollywood stupid, but there was some actual thought and planning there. Some of those ideas might actually be useful.
Yes, exactly.
Some of those ideas.
The bit that terrifies me is how much input Tom Cruise may have actually had into the bits of it that were good. Total Recall. In the last version of this presentation, it was called the remake with 100% less Arnie. Since then, it was released. It is a film that not even Kate Beckinsale in skin-tight leather can save.
It's that bad.
I've seen Underworld. That's what I'm doing. It is that bad.
What do you know about Total Recall?
Absolutely nothing.
Okay. You've seen the original?
Absolutely nothing.
The original is Arnie kicking ass on Mars.
Is that not basically every Arnie film, just not on Mars?
But the point is, in Total Recall remake, what don't you have? Name me two things that aren't in it.
We have 10 minutes left.
Oh.
Right, okay, Total Recall, new movie, bad, but it was definitely Cyberpunk. New Dread, yes. Cyberpunk 2077, if you haven't seen the trailer that they've released for it that shows you absolutely nothing about nothing about gameplay, nothing about the system they're using, you watch that trailer, you're still going to buy the game.
Oh yeah.
And the Euromancer movie, which is coming up. Right, reasons for the rise and fall and rise of Cyberpunk. There is renewed interest in the genre. Probably that's something to do with the fact people of our generation who watched the shit and read the shit are now actually in a position to pay for the shit. Audiences are more familiar with the concepts. I'll refer you to Google Glass. The things that in Cyberpunk are considered fantastical technology in the 80s, we now use to post pictures of cats to our friends. We aren't going to discuss because we are running low on time. Jeez, okay. Cyberpunk in anime, which is actually what we're talking about. These are the definitive bits. Paprika I slot in because it's... I think it's worth a look in, especially from the existentialist perspective that we were talking about earlier. And it technically qualifies in the same way that god-awful film with, Singer can't sing.
The Cell with Jennifer Lopez.
That's the bunny. Dominion. Anyone here not seen Dominion Tank Police? Worth checking out. The first set of 4 OVAs is darker. It's
The hilarious manga video dub.
yes, the hilarious manga video dub. It must be seen. And there are the giant inflatable penises, which never get old. The second set of OVAs is more targeted and more linear in its structure, in its plot structure. It probably makes better viewing if you're not in love with the original, the way I am. But for my part, it's the first set of OVAs, and then you watch the other 8 just because you've got nothing else to watch. AD Police and Parasite Dolls are a lot darker than Wildum Crisis, or Wildum Crash, or... I like trash, okay? I know I'm not supposed to, but it's a guilty pleasure. Crisis 2040, I find as an encapsulated unit, is better than the OVAs as an encapsulated unit, but every individual episode of the OVAs is better than each individual episode of Wildum Crisis 2040. You're welcome to take those opinions with a pinch of salt. I am drunk. And Akira's overrated, but still worth seeing if you've never seen it. Ghost in the Shell. It was the best thing ever when everybody saw it. It has since become Marmite. And I'm not sure whether it's hipster to like it, or hipster to hate it.
I had to see it twice before I even came remotely close to understand what the fuck was going on.
I still don't understand what happened in it.
It was like that.
Have you seen the second one?
Oh, no, we do not have time. We do not have time. Salty Ray. If you've not seen it, it is worth looking at. It is definitely cyberpunk. It has high sci-fi elements, but they feed nothing into the plot. It's all about the robots and questions of life. Metropolis. Yay! If you've not seen it, watch it. Bakuretsu Tenshi. It's kind of like the chicks from Eva blowing shit up with giant robots, but not giant robots, just mediocre giant robots. And
100% less Shinji.
100% less Shinji. Deno Coil, for which I was going to actually have a brief segue and show you the Google Glass video, but we're out of time because we started late. Deno Coil is an anime, I'm not sure it was ever licensed. It was very, very insightful about its approach to augmented reality and what happens in a situation where augmented reality that you are used to is being subtly changed in fashions that you don't notice to begin with, and how that affects your perspectives on actual reality. A friend of mine says it's very, well, an old friend of mine says it's very, very insightful. I just think it's kind of cool. Marduk Scramble, I didn't like it, but I'm told it is Cyberpunk, and there is new Ghost in the Shell, but don't, please. Go ahead.
Psychopaths should probably be on.
Yes, it definitely should be. We'll concede that point with that argument.
Serial Experiment Lane?
Yes. The reason that I tend to shy away from Serial Experiments Lane is I tended to shoot for things that were actively science fiction, and where Lane has definite science fiction elements, it was very much present day. Personally, now, as you consider that most of the things we considered science of the future are science of the present, definitely Serial Experiments Lane. And if you haven't seen it, slap yourself on the back of the hand very hard. Yes, all of these things that I have huge essays to talk about, but we don't have time. Anime has a different emphasis traditionally on Cyberpunk compared to our emphasis on it, and that has become more visible as time's moved on. It comes to dystopia versus anti-utopia, as Dave puts it. A lot of Western stuff is mostly anti-utopic, whereas Ghost in the Shell is a true dystopia, especially in standalone complex, It's a happy-go-lucky world where everybody has technology that can do everything. Oh my god, my heart! My heart is in front of my face! And focus has changed over time. Tanks and Catgirls, Deno Coil, more sort of towards the insightful, thought-provoking end of things. Sadly, it is waning in popularity. No moe, no money. It tends to be how I view it. It's very difficult to make moe cyberpunk, probably because you would pull the plug on the little fuckers. Right, and what we're doing in the real world, well, this is the old stuff. If you're interested in it from an academic perspective, Cybernetics is the study of self-governance, very good paper. James Clerk Maxwell's Self-Regulating Devices in 1868. If you like reading classical science papers and have nothing to do with a week, that's worth reading. Bell Labs, Bell's 1927 Amplifier Control Through Negative Feedback is actually kind of seminal to everything that makes cyberpunk in the real world possible, in inverted commas, and I clarify that, we're out of time. Von Neumann's Cellular Automata, very insightful, and Alan Turing. I had a student last week and I asked him what a Turing machine was, and he said it was a machine Turing made.
How much time did you slap him into?
I suggested that he do design. Okay, biological analog. In AI, it's all about biological analog now, artificial neural nets, genetic algorithms. If you can prove that there's a biological analog to your research, you get shit tons of money. If you're saying, I want things to go faster on the existing technology, they say, talk to industry. Multi-value logic systems, that's kind of what I'm a PhD in. It's relevant, but increasingly less so as we move to sort of fuzzy state machine technology. And robotics. Yay, robots, Brooks subsumption architecture, all that jazz. The stuff that makes things walking around on Mars possible when they don't crash into craters and never get heard from again, Duncan? Yeah. Current programs, nerve reactive prostheses. These now exist and are available on the NHS.
Last week, I read a short paper on the opposite. There's a cybernetic hand that can sense and send a signal back down the nerve the opposite way around.
That is glorious. Can you email me that paper? Well, email chairman at Amecon and Dave will
I found it in the most unscientific way possible from iFucking Upsides on Facebook.
Fantastic. What?
I will just point out that the dealers are currently stocking prosthetic category gears that will react to your brain.
I'm not sure if that's awesome or disturbing. I'll leave that to the audience.
Both at the same time.
Oh.
It's distorsome. That's
Yeah. The Japanese Young Girl Project, and that's really what it was called. In 2002, I will be done very soon, Karen, I promise. In 2002, the Japanese government commissioned a 30-year-long project, the purpose of which was to develop an artificial intelligence with the emotional capacities and capabilities of a 10-year-old girl. That would conclude in 2032. Who here has seen BGC 2040? The year of the Great Earthquake, people! The year of the Great Earthquake! Now we know what caused it. Effective computing, MIT does a shitload on this about a robot that's basically very, very selfish. It's kind of like Anime Fangirl. And Professor Kevin Warwick. He's yes. Thank you. He's the guy who put a little chip in his wife so we could track where she was going every hour of the day. Right. Will the current project deliver robotics? Not in the sense of what you think from Ghost in the Shell. Just no. Skynet, similarly, is never going to happen. Although there are 3 programs called Skynet, none of them are really doing that shit. So,
Why don't you reckon Skynet will ever happen?
Largely, well, I don't believe it would ever happen in the way that Terminator tells us it would. The fact of the matter is that in order for the Terminator to kill Sarah Connor, some programmer has to have made kill Sarah Connor an acceptable combination at the end of a genetic algorithm.
The actual defence net you don't report.
No, but the actual gaining self-awareness and taking over all the machines, that shit won't fly.
If you want a project called Skynet.
There are 3, as I say. One of them with us and 2 with America.
How would with this putting just a little small kill Sarah Connor in there somewhere?
Robotic limbs. You can get them on the NHS now. And they are. There's a brilliant BBC article on cybernetic hands, and one that somebody is using regularly to pick stuff up and.
I'd
You
like
know,
a chainsaw personally, but
chainsaw and a shotgun to deal with zombies, kind of preferable. Cyber decks, we're never going to need them. We don't need them. We're going to have augmented reality. I know they look cool.
We already have them.
Yeah, exactly. You have an iPhone or an Android phone. It's more powerful than anything Gibson ever envisioned. Google Glass, all over that shit like ham on rye. It's augmented reality, as close as we're going to get in the next 5 years. And wetware, just no, Kevin Warwick thinks so, but he can hiss.
What is wetware?
Right, and we're out of time for this.
What is wetware?
So we're going to move out of the way. Wetware, that's where you actually graft a cybernetic material to the human body. The definitions vary depending on who you ask. Kevin Warwick's definition, he's the published academic in the area, is shit you put inside somebody that is electronic.
There's been a very recent report of experiments done on rats in cities separated by several thousand miles. So you stimulate the implant in one, and the other one responds, effectively mechanical telepathy.
Yeah, and it's very interesting. I wouldn't want it done to me, but yes, it is definitely worth looking into if you're interested in that end of things. Don't try it on your rats at home.
So just don't want to break you off midstream, but we're actually running 5 minutes late now, so
yeah, I know, I'm going to run away. There we go.